So firstly, just thanks everybody for who has led everything so far and allowed me to be a participant in this. And it's just been fantastic just to think about research and all of the different aspects of it. Um, I kind of got inspired to do this really through work that I'm involved with. There's a group chaired by Joe Barry that has been set up by the Minister for Health in Ireland that is looking to monitor and evaluate the Public Health Alcohol Act, and I'm a member of that group along with several other ACORN members. And I think it just really shows us how there is a real need and a desire to learn across jurisdictions. So the Scottish Government are looking at marketing policies and looking at a consultation on that, and the Irish Government have implemented the legislation or have passed the legislation but are still to implement it. So that, there's just huge potential in this, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. I will try to contain what my enthusiasm though and keep to time on this short presentation. So just really to give you an introduction to what our activities are. So we have the 4 themes. We do have a policy focus. I guess the sense was that in terms of the capacity gap around alcohol policy research, and particularly in the Republic of Ireland, where there have been very, very strong work done in the past, but where those people have been, moving to later stages of their career, and there have been fewer active experienced research groups, we felt that that gap applies more acutely in policy research rather than, say, research into alcohol treatment necessarily. So population level focus really that you can see in the themes that we've chosen. We're really focused on building capacity, and we know that alongside this sort of, I suppose, demographic shift in terms of the research community in Ireland, there are very strong active research groups in the UK, as well as several very strong individual researchers working in institutions across the UK, and a lot of that has been pump primed, I suppose, through the MESAS team, Claire Beeston's team, where there are a number of studies commissioned directly by using Scottish Government money, but also that has, I think, facilitated a lot of other independent studies who have been brought under this umbrella in terms of the MESAS evaluation. So that's been a real precursor. And I suppose there's a desire here for us to use the Public Health Alcohol Act in Ireland as a kind of world leading piece of alcohol policy to do the same and to build that capacity in a way that MUP in Scotland has not just built capacity amongst Scottish researchers, but amongst researchers across several jurisdictions. We want to try to do the same. But what does that mean? So I was thinking as I was writing this, what does it really mean to build capacity? And I think these are the kind of stages. So there will be people who have skills working in public health, working in geography, working in all of the disciplines that we've been meeting with today, who may not have thought about what they can do around alcohol policy research. So building interest in this area is one of our first steps, I think, and hopefully today has gone some way to doing that. But I think there's still probably work to be done there. Then raising awareness of, like, why is this interesting? What are the policy developments? What are the research opportunities and needs? What are the methods we might use that people can relate to? Some people will feel more comfortable in qual and quant and so on. So where can they make a contribution? And then really moving, and this is where the lack of face-to-face collaboration is challenging for us, moving towards new collaborations developing. We've got a year of funding. And so it's a challenge, I think, to really build those small teams. I think small is beautiful in this context. I think, most research studies at this stage, you don't go to sort of like 20-person teams immediately when you're trying to build capacity. So I think it's that even people pairing up, people working together and just getting to know who you feel you can work with, who has an interest in the same areas as you do, who might bring something different to the table in terms of their background. So that's really what we're thinking. And our focus is so much on strengthening those relationships over the course of the year so that the groundwork is there. So whatever new collaborations develop over the course of this year, they have the potential to outlast the network and have the potential to secure research funding, which is really what will, I suppose, consolidate those relationships. As with many public health interventions more generally, I think there is a risk of those who least need ACORN being the ones who might be most able to engage and find it easiest to benefit from it. So we will be, as a steering group, very actively mindful of that. So if you already have very good networks and a strong portfolio, you might not be prioritized for support from ACORN because I think it is about building capacity. So I suppose just to be totally honest about that at the start, albeit there's obviously a need for learning across experienced and less experienced people. So there are 4 main activities that we're planning. These were all planned in the hope that we would be able to meet face to face. So I'll talk a little bit about the adjustments. of these that you can see here, I'll go through them one by one, but just to say that it's likely that the seminars and the research symposium at the end will be public facing, although we may need to restrict numbers somewhat and prioritize as we did today to facilitate that networking and those small group discussions. But the study visits and the capacity building workshop will likely be restricted to researchers, although of course policy partners may have a role in terms of being part of those, but the participants or the people going on the study visits would be restricted to researchers. So just to take those one by one, the themed seminars that we plan for, one on each theme, we plan for those to be led jointly by UK-based co-applicants with who are perhaps more experienced, so that may not always be the case, and Republic of Ireland colleagues. It's intended that those would be face-to-face. We may have to run some of the early ones online and try to replicate this side program. So the idea was that you would have a seminar, but you would also, as part of that, visit the universities in the local area and meet with teams from different disciplines who might be in very small groups to talk about alcohol policy research and how people might get involved and interested in that. Of course, it is challenging to replicate those face-to-face conversations online, but I think we will have to think about that, especially for the first few that we do. We want to facilitate early career researchers to really kind of get to know what alcohol policy research looks like and what a research group looks like. So the idea here would be that we have funding at least for travel, accommodation and subsistence for a week for 4 early career researchers to work with an established alcohol policy research team. And that could be, that they work on a paper in that week or a funding bid, or, it's specifically linked to, say, perhaps joint work with partners or public involvement. We're going to be looking for proposals essentially from candidates who've already identified and contacted a host team, agreed a set of activities, and it'll be a competitive process based on the quality of the candidate, the host, and the proposed activities. In terms of the capacity building and bid development workshop, we have run capacity building workshops on alcohol policy, research and practice through Spectrum and previously through the UK Centre for Tobacco and Alcohol Studies. And those are very effective in terms of, sorry, I just see Suzanne is in the waiting room. And those are very effective in terms of bringing researchers, research users, and more experienced and less experienced people together to learn. We're going to try to adapt that a little bit, or possibly have discussions with Spectrum to see if there's room for combining efforts on this. But what's different from the previous workshops is that we would also want to tag on to this perhaps a half day or a day of facilitated bid writing. So where you're again in the same room, hopefully, as people that you're actually wanting to work up ideas with. So whether that's bid idea generation or actually writing bids, we'll need to see what people are ready for at that stage. At the end of ACORN, our sort of final event is intended to be a conference effectively, or a smaller mini conference with abstract submission and invited plenary speakers. We will have a fee for that to cover catering and also to subsidise free places for early career researchers, but it will be a fairly nominal fee. It was intended that would be in Belfast if our launch event was in Dublin. And the idea with this really is that, obviously it's only coming at the end of a year. If people are new to ACORN now, we're not expecting that you have sort of fully research, publishable ready research by the time we get to a conference. So we would welcome at that, as with some other alcohol policy conference like the KBS conference, work in progress. So if you're working on a paper and you want to get feedback from others, that would also be welcome at this conference. And so our task for the steering group is to progress all of our ideas on all of this and make more concrete plans. And I suppose a lot of it is deciding what to, kind of hold our nerve about and hold off and wait to see if we can do face-to-face and what we need to go ahead with now. I'm aware that we use the same form for the launch as we did for membership applications. There were also additional membership applications from people who couldn't attend the launch. We need to review those and approve them. We're just checking really there to make sure that people meet the eligibility criteria and also just keeping an eye on any potential conflicts of interest. That form also served as a sign up to our mailing list. I know there's a couple of people on today who their forms didn't come through to us. So even if you've been able to attend today, we still do need you to go back and make sure you go through all the steps of completing the form, or you won't hit our mailing list. So if you don't get a confirmation when you've filled it in, that probably means that something's been missed, perhaps the little "I'm not a robot" bit at the end. we need to work out the timing of our events. And I suppose it's really important to mention here that the funding that we've received is for the events. There's absolutely no funding for staff time. There isn't even funding for administrative time for this. So I'm hugely grateful to all of the people who have supported this event, and we will need to rely on that for the rest of the events too. One thing that was mentioned there about a repository, we do have a Teams site. The idea would be that all members of the network will be invited to that Teams site. Whether that would be suitable for that repository of kind of marketing examples, I'm not sure. But I think that will also allow us to have sort of online chat with members of the group, and we'll set up channels for each theme on that Teams site. So last couple of slides, just very quickly. If you have met somebody today with shared interests as a first step to building new collaborations across UK and Ireland, could you reach out to them? Could you write a blog together? I mean, that would be a great way just to see how well you can work with the person. Whether you develop those conversations, develop those shared interests. There have been tons of ideas raised today that I think would lend themselves to really nice blogs, to not just for the sake of the blog going on the website, but actually to really start develop those relationships. So labeling policy and politics across different jurisdictions, availability, data, community consultation on availability, pricing, acceptability in different parts of loads. There were lots, I think, that people with interest could potentially, if you can manage to find the time, collaborate on. We're particularly, obviously, we're about building capacity. So we're really interested in bringing in early career researchers. So even if you're not currently working or very actively working on alcohol policy research, but this is something that you'd like to develop your career in, I would strongly encourage you to get in touch. We need people to tweet. We need people to help with everything, really. So the more that you can help with, the more you'll get to know the experienced people who are already founding members of ACORN, and just develop your networks. What I would say, as someone who only has been working in academia in this field for about 7 years now, that alcohol policy, both in the UK and Ireland and internationally, as a research community, it's just a fabulous community to join, and it's so supportive. So we're really keen to inspire people to build their careers in this field, and that's how we will, I think, secure all of those impacts in terms of generating the evidence and the impact on policy that will ultimately make a difference to people's lives in terms of alcohol harms. Thanks, everybody.